Hello everyone, welcome back to the Toy Corner. Today we have a first for the channel, we have a first for this collection, and we have a first for myself personally. A complete Build-A-Figure wave. Now, love it, hate it, say what you like about Build-A-Figures, but you have to admit that it is really smart to split a figure of the line up between everything to ensure the full wave sells. Some people will look at this as being forced to buy a character they otherwise would not have purchased on their own, but I like to take a look at it and see that this wonderful character wouldn't have been added to my collection if not for the Build-A-Figure parts. It's an interesting way to gather and learn more about some figures that I otherwise wouldn't have been all that interested in. Love it, hate it, feel it's a bad practice, feel it's a great practice, doesn't matter, I'm excited to add these to the shelf, so let's begin. And we'll get this video started with Wonder Woman. I love Diana when she's written well. As a character, she is one of the best heroes there is, bar none. Unfortunately, I didn't really have a Wonder Woman when I was growing up. Side and back and all that fun stuff. Mostly just because I didn't have access to comics, and there wasn't really an animated series that involved her up until Justice League, which was great. But I wasn't really watching cartoons at that time, although I did go back and watch it. Fantastic show. Should absolutely give it a watch if you haven't, but let's get her open. And here she is out of the box. Has a wonderful winter ensemble. I love this fur cape. I kind of wish that it was an actual cloth good, but it looks good plastic. These figures, the McFarlane Multiverse figures all actually come with a figure stand in the box. Perfect for my channel where I tend to forget to buy those every single time I shop. You can see the lasso of truth hanging from her side, however, it is fixed in place, you cannot take it off, and there is not an accessory for the lasso with this figure, but she does have a very wonderful sword. We'll take a good look at that. The sword has a nice sculpt, the golden handle with some really good fine details for the blade, little diamond point at the end. I like how it's wider down here, thinner up here, and then wider again up here. Just nice little effect. The sword slides nicely into the sheath on her back, so she can have the weapon at the ready. Everything on the figure is a permanent fixture. Unfortunately, we cannot remove the cape, but she does look best with the cape, so I suppose that's a good thing. Overall, I think it's just a really well done, really interesting figure. Then again, I've always sort of had a weakness for winter ensembles. I just think they look great. Thus far, all the joints are not too stiff and not too loose, kind of that good middle ground. They all feel like ratchet joints, which is nice. She has a lot of articulation around the wrists, the elbows, everywhere that you would want it to be, shoulders and all that. Although, unfortunately, some of her articulation is sort of hindered by these skirts and capes and other such things. And of course, all DC Multiverse have toe articulation that only serve to make it look like she has broken her feet. Mind you, even without the stand, she is well balanced. But I think that is all that I really have to say about this figure. The only other thing she comes with is a lovely card with some info on the back, should you care to read it. But let us move on. Next up we have Batman, who should need no introduction, I would hope. But while we were looking over Wonder Woman, I did forget to mention, apparently these are from a comic series called Justice League Endless Winter. Now, I have never read this series, but from the costume design, it does look like I should. Nothing new to say about the box, it's the exact same box, pretty much, so let's just get it open. With Batman out of his package, we can take a better look at the figure. You can see the Batarang that he comes with has a big red button on it. It was a little difficult to get him to hold it, but we got there. I like his armored blue jacket. I enjoy the fact that the utility belt is on the outside. It just shows that he's not going to be taking this off. It must be really, really cold in Endless Winter. He doesn't even have his face exposed. And I'm guessing that there must be some problem with the lighting too. These red goggles, maybe they're ultraviolet light protectors, I'm not entirely sure. But outside of the little details like the coat, you can see he's very armored up under there. We can see hints of the figure underneath. Of course, this jacket, much like Wonder Woman's cape, is also not removable, which is fine. This guy looks more like a kind of a stand. He doesn't look like a sit down and sip coffee type. I mean, how could he? He has no mouth with which to sip. One of the things that I really appreciate with the McFarlane figures is just the detail. I mean, the textures here and here really just add to this, and just the little bits of armor, the bolts that hold them together, every little seam that you can see just make these characters just stand out. They just pop. They look great. They are in that 7-inch scale, which there are so many lines out there that have 6-inch and 7-inch, and I just kind of wish that we could get to a standardized size so they would all look good together. A 7-inch Batman would look fine with a 6-inch Ninja Turtle, but perhaps not a 6-inch Wolverine. Well, Wolverine's actually supposed to be short anyway, so that's a bad example. Moving on. Batman's articulation, much like Wonder Woman's, is that nice, not too tight, not too loose, ratchet joint, but of course, due to his large coat here, you're not going to get much posability outside of broken toes. And of course his arms. You're free to move his arms just about any which way, although these shoulder pads do also inhibit his movement just a little. They're flexible, so you can get some, but a little bit. He stands fine on his own, just like Wonder Woman did, and of course, here is that lovely card, should you wish to read it. Now, Batman was a character that I did grow up with. I grew up watching the animated series. It was a big part of my childhood. I grew up with the Schumacher movies. Yes, I started out by watching the original Batman. I may have watched Batman Returns as a child. I don't remember, really. But I do remember, quite fondly, actually, the Schumacher films, both Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I don't care if you don't like them. I did. I probably still do. Meaning, of course, that I had plenty of Batman toys to choose from as a child, so as much as I watched, as much as I played, as much as I dressed up and pretended, Batman was a big part of my childhood, and I'm happy to add him to the shelf. Next up, we have our first figure that is not in winter attire of any sort, but his Green Lantern ring would probably give him all the warmth he needed in there because it is powered by the will and by imagination. Thus, he wouldn't really need a large coat or anything to stay warm. John Stewart, smart individual. John Stewart was the first Green Lantern that I watched on television. This is because I saw him in the Justice League cartoon, much like with Wonder Woman. I just didn't really have anything Green Lantern that I grew up with as a child. I didn't read the comics, I didn't have the comics, I didn't really have access to the comics to get attached to the Green Lantern in any way. So John Stewart is my Green Lantern. No offense to Hal Jordan, I'm sure he's a wonderful, spectacular Green Lantern, it's just this is the one that comes to mind when I think Green Lantern. Again, with the box, there's just not really anything new or impressive to see. I do find it interesting that with characters like Green Lantern, though, they feel the need to point out that it's John Stewart, as if we couldn't tell by looking at him. Alright, let's get him open. Alright, and here we have our John Stewart Green Lantern out of the package. He's the first one, like I said, without any sort of winter attire, which means that we get to see his hero suit for this comic series in some good detail. He has a peg in the back, which is interesting, because I don't know what could possibly go there. If I had to guess, this might be a reused sculpt from a figure that actually had something that plugged in, maybe a large Gatling gun, or, I don't know, a scuba pack, a set of wings, something that would have plugged into the back there. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure what that's for. Is that? Well, we'll just have to keep an eye out and see if it's on other DC Multiverse figures. But continuing the slow little turnaround here, you can see that the figure has some amazing details on his suit. The sculpt is great. Again, the face work is amazing. I think these figures really stand out in the small details. McFarlane is great with its sculpt. I'm sure it always has been. Accessories, he has these two green swords, which look amazing, the Green Lantern energy, but the first thing that I thought when I saw them was, I believe the company Tycho, correct me if I'm wrong, had a series of Double Dragon figures based off of a television show from the 90s. Not a very good show, trust me, don't watch it, it's not very good. But the toys, I always loved the toys, and they had these green dragon swords that look just like this, and that's just what popped into my mind. Although, speaking of his swords, they were a nightmare to get into his hand. My fingers still hurt from that effort, but that aside, he is the first one that we can really see what range of articulation these figures have, and it does come to point out this strange, apparently they have to cover up their joints to make it look more smooth, I guess they have this sort of soft, pliable plastic center, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's interesting. It's okay. It doesn't really look horrible, but I think a joint break in the sculpt would look just fine too. Ugh, getting the swords out of his hands was almost as difficult as getting them in. He was also a little bit harder to stand than the others. I'm not sure if it's something with his feet, or maybe the others are wearing boots, something that caused him to just be a little bit more off balance, but I think I have him pretty balanced right now. An interesting detail to take note of is they did sculpt the ring in to his hand. Probably didn't have to do that, but I appreciate the effort. Something else that I find interesting about this character is, even though he's the first one to have no sort of winter gear getting in his way, he also has stiff joints out of the package. Not sure if I should be forcing this, but if he breaks live on camera, well, we'll have something to say about that. With all that said, John Stewart is a welcome addition to the toy shelf. Last, and quite unfortunately least, is Black Adam. This is the figure that, were it not part of the Build-A-Figure set, I never would have purchased. I guess I am slightly interested to learn more about this character simply because I own him, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in a bag, in a bin, instead of displayed proudly on the toy shelf. I know nothing about this character. He was, I believe, in one of the two, if not both, of the Injustice games, but that's all I know about him. I know that he's portrayed by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the movie that I never watched. Again, box-wise, same deal. Let's get rid of the box. And here's Black Adam out of the box with his zappy fist accessories. At least I assume they're for his fist. I don't know any other way they might work. They're cool effects, but I do wish it was a little more obvious how I should put them on the figure. He also appears not to be wearing any special winter clothing, but as I know next to nothing about this character, I will rely on you to let me know. Is there anything special about this outfit, this costume? Is this new for him? Is this old for him? Is this just a interesting design? Or because of the boots, is it winter attire? I don't know. His suit does have a lot of intricate and interesting detail. It's just, I find myself at a loss for words simply because I just don't know the character. I do find it interesting that unlike Green Lantern, he doesn't have the soft section in the middle. He does sort of have this soft plastic thing hanging down here, although he does not have a hole in his back. So, I'm not entirely sure where that came from for John, but neither here nor there. And much like most of the other figures in this line, he stands fairly well on his own. He's decently well balanced, no falling over there. But I will say that I sort of wish they would have chosen to include a different character. Now, having not read the comics, I don't know what characters they had to work with. I don't know what other options they may have had. Maybe he is the only other character in that book. But I will say that if we were just looking for winter clothing variants, nice winter suits, I wouldn't have minded seeing, say, Black Canary in a winter outfit. I think that would have been amazing, but I don't even know she's in the comics, so I don't know if that would have been possible, but a lot of this just comes to the disconnect. I don't know this character, and that can kind of be a problem of the Build-A-Figure wave. In this case, it doesn't really make me want to learn more about this guy. Nothing is striking that makes me say, oh, who is this? I want to know more about them. If you want to know more about them. However, if you want to know more about them, there is the blurb on the card. Have fun reading it. So I did, out of curiosity, read a little up on the card, and apparently, I guess Black Adam is sort of like a dark Shazam, so he's sort of like Shazam, but evil, all the same powers and all that. Problem is, I don't really know anything about Shazam either, so I suppose it's yet to be seen whether he will be a proud addition to the toy shelf or my first bin warmer, but we'll see. If nothing else, it makes me giggle that his Build-A-Figure part, the legs, have part of the butt on them. But we're not going to end it there on that little dour note. The Build-A-Figure line's most important feature, the one that makes you want to pick up the line at all or not, is the Build-A-Figure itself. Let's get building. And finally, together for the first time, we have the full Frost King. This figure is fantastic. The sword, I love the translucency of the plastic, and he also has that on his arm and his shoulder and his horns coming out there. The armored sort of Viking devil sort of look. Oh, it's just amazing. The fur, the cape with the fur running down his back with his actually his hair stuck on the cape, there we go. Sort of just gives him this really powerful presence. I can only imagine how interesting I hope this person would have been. Don't fall. I can only imagine how interesting and imposing he must have been in the comics. Look at how big this guy is. Let's get some of the other figures in here just to compare sizes. Here's Diana next to him. She's actually the tallest of the other figures. She might be tied with Black Adam, but I would much rather have Diana's lovely, colorful costume next to the cold blues and grays of our Frost King compared to, cold blues and grays and then a dark black with some blues. But you can see that he just absolutely towers over her size. This guy is big, he's meaty, and I just love the look. I love the cold colors. I don't know anything about the character. I need to read this comic. I am going to do that as homework. I am reading that comic. Construction-wise, it was a little bit difficult getting this guy together, mostly in the legs, just because remember how I said the leg had part of the butt? Well, the rest of the butt right here really got in the way of where the peg was going into the legs, and I am a little concerned that it might be somewhat easy to pop these pieces back apart. I don't have any intention of ever taking this character, the Frost King, apart, but I hope that over time they don't wear down to the point where they just don't come off. As with everyone else, it was a bit of a challenge to get his weapon in his hand. I think getting it out won't be that difficult. No, it came right out. This sword might have been what sold this character to me. Just these translucent parts probably are what sold this to me in the first place. But do I consider this figure worth the cost of the one figure in this line that I didn't particularly enjoy? Absolutely. 100%. I'd have bought 2 more to get this fellow. Articulation-wise, he doesn't seem to have that much trouble moving everything the way that it should move, but of course, with all of this bendable plastic, you're not going to get a lot of posability out of him, and there is a little bit of stiffness to the leg joints, but I think that comes less from I think that comes less from the joint itself and more just the massive size of this figure. But before we can add this fellow to the shelf, it's time for the group shot, so let's get that set up. So there we have it, our first Build-A-Figure complete wave, our first DC Multiverse added to the collection. But let me know your thoughts about DC Multiverse. Let me know your thoughts about Build-A-Figures, or if there were any characters that you would rather seen swapped out. Have you seen too many Batman? Should we have had maybe a Nightwing or something? Let me know. Personally, I'm happy to add them all to the shelf, but let me know. Do you like me to do a complete Build-A-Figure wave, or would you rather me review figures just mixed together individually and sort of lead up to the Build-A-Figure? I would be curious to know what your thoughts and opinions are. And thank you once again for watching, for joining me in this next step in becoming a toy collector. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of each other, simply take care.